The alarm bells rang through Station Harmony 7 like angry metal birds. Commander Vexed Eye, a tall blue creature with 4 arms and eyes like black pearls, rushed to the main control room. Long legs carried him quickly down the white hallways of the space station that floated far from any planet. "What is happening?" Vexed Eye asked, as he entered the room full of blinking lights and screens. Officer Zilara, who looked like a walking tree with silver bark, turned one of her many eyes toward him. "Commander, we are getting a signal from the Kepler 442 system. It is very weak and broken." Vexed Eye moved to the big screen at the front of the room. Static filled most of it, but he could see parts of a face. The creature had white skin that looked like it was made of moonlight and wings that seemed to be made of glass. This is Elder Salandros of New Haven Colony." The voice came through the speakers, full of fear and pain. "Please, ... anyone who can hear this, ... we need help. They came from the dark between stars. We do not know what they want. They are not taking our resources. They are not taking our land. They are taking ... They are taking us." The signal got worse. The face on the screen broke into small pieces before coming back together. "Our cities are burning. Our people are hiding in caves under the ground. These creatures ... They hunt us like we are animals. But worse. Animals they kill quickly. They keep us alive. They enjoy our fear. They enjoy our pain. 200,000 of us lived here when they came. Now, I think only a few thousand are left." The screen went completely white with static for several seconds. When the face came back, there was blood on the creature's forehead. Silver. Blood that looked like liquid metal. "Please, if anyone receives this message, tell the Galactic Council. Tell them the Zephyrians of New Haven are dying. Tell them we tried to live in peace. Tell them we never hurt anyone. Tell them the signal." Died. The screen went black. The control room became very quiet. Officer Zillara's branches shook like leaves in wind. "Commander, that was the 3rd signal we have received from that system in the past week. Each one weaker than the last." Vexed Eye felt cold inside his chest. The Zephyrians were gentle creatures. They were scientists and artists. They studied plants and made beautiful music with their minds. They had never fought a war. They did not even have weapons. "Send word to the Galactic Council immediately," Vexed Eye said. "Emergency session, priority alpha." 3 hours later, Vexed Eye stood in the great hall of the council station. The room was huge, with seats for all the different species in the galaxy. Most of the seats were full. Creatures with scales, fur, metal skin, and stranger things all talked at once. "Order, order," shouted Council Speaker Morden, a being that looked like a giant rock with eyes. "We have all heard the signals from New Haven. What can we do?" General Crixinel, a warrior from the militant Scori Empire, stood up. His red carapace shone under the lights. "My fleet is fighting pirates in the Outer Rim. I cannot spare ships for 3 months. The Healer Corps is dealing with the plague on Serenity 9, said Dr. Ulessa, whose tentacles moved sadly. "We have no ships for war. The Trade Federation vessels are not made for fighting," added Merchant Prince Bolter, his golden skin dimming. With worry, one by one, each species explained why they could not help. Too far away, too weak, too busy. Council Speaker Morden's rocky face looked grim. Is there no one who can reach them in time? The room became quiet. On the great map that floated above them, New Haven's star blinked red like a dying heart. Then a small voice spoke from the back of the room. "What about the humans?" Everyone turned to look. The speaker was Ambassador Quilin, a small gray creature with large black eyes. She was new to the council, just like the species she represented. The humans. General Crixinel laughed, but it was not a happy sound. They are Deathworlders, barbarians from a planet that should not support life. Their world has acid rain and metal-eating bacteria, said Dr. Ulessa with disgust. They evolved from creatures that ate meat and killed for fun. They fight each other for sport, added Merchant Prince Bolter. They are barely civilized. Ambassador Quilin stood up straighter. Yes, they are from a death world. They are warriors. But they are also the only species with ships close enough to reach New Haven in time. Council Speaker Morden's eyes glowed brighter. How close? 3 weeks travel time, Quillen answered. And their military is... significant. The room filled with uncomfortable whispers. Everyone knew the stories about humans, how they came from a world where almost everything tried to kill them, how they survived ice ages and asteroid impacts. They made weapons out of everything, how they fought, wars that lasted for years. Deathworlders fighting Deathworlders, muttered General Crixenal. Do we have a choice? Asked Council Speaker Morden. The room became quiet again. On the map, New Haven's star continued to blink red. Finally, Council Speaker Morden spoke. Contact Earth. Tell them the Galactic Council requests their aid. Tell them... double quotes. He paused as if the words were hard to say. Tell them we need warriors. Ambassador Quillen bowed her head. I will send the message immediately. As she left the Great Hall, the other council members continued to argue. Some said it was a mistake. Some said humans were too dangerous. Some said they would make things worse. But deep in space, the signal traveled toward a small blue planet. At the edge of the galaxy, a planet covered in water and storms and creatures that refused to die quietly, the signal reached. Earth just as the sun was setting over the Pacific Ocean. In a bunker buried deep under a mountain, Admiral Sarah Chen read the message twice before reaching for the red phone on her desk. Get me Colonel Rodriguez, she said. Tell him to prepare the 3rd Expeditionary Force. She looked out through the thick glass window at the Earth's surface above. Somewhere up there, most humans were sleeping peacefully, not knowing that their species was about to do something it had never done before. They were about to go to war for strangers they had never met, on a world they had never seen, against an enemy they did not understand. But they were going anyway, because sometimes being the monsters meant protecting those who could not protect themselves. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching Earth turn slowly below. The blue and white planet looked peaceful from space, but she knew better. That world had created the most dangerous soldiers in the galaxy.
Admiral?
Colonel Rodriguez is here, said Lieutenant Park, a young officer with sharp eyes. The door opened and Colonel Marcus Rodriguez walked in. He was not the biggest man Sarah had ever seen, but something about him made the room feel smaller. Dark hair had gray streaks at the sides, and scars marked his hands and face. His eyes were the color of winter storms. You called for Hell's Cavalry, Admiral? Rodriguez asked. His voice was calm, but Sarah could hear the steel underneath. We have a situation, Marcus. The Galactic Council needs our help. Sarah touched a button on her desk. The wall screen lit up, showing the broken transmission from New Haven. Rodriguez watched the Zephyrian's frightened face without moving. When the message ended, he was quiet for a long moment. How many of our people do you want me to take? Ask 500? Your best? Rodriguez nodded slowly. When do we leave? 6 hours. The Council is sending all the information they have about the enemy. Sarah handed him a datapad. What do you think, Marcus? Rodriguez looked at the pad for several minutes. His face showed nothing, but Sarah had known him for 10 years. She could see his mind working. These Ravagers, he said finally. They are not fighting a war. They are playing a game. What do you mean? Look at their pattern. They could have killed all the Zephyrians in one day with orbital bombing. Instead, they landed troops. They hunt on foot. They keep prisoners alive. Rodriguez set the pad down. They enjoy the hunt more than the kill. Sarah felt cold. That makes them more dangerous. No, Rodriguez said, and for the first time, he smiled. It was not a nice smile. That makes them stupid. They think fear is a weapon. They've never met anyone who uses fear better than they do. 2 hours later, Rodriguez stood in the loading bay of the heavy cruiser Indomitable. 500 soldiers stood in perfect rows before him. These were not ordinary troops. They came from every corner of Earth's military. Marines who had fought in jungle wars, Rangers who had climbed frozen mountains, Spetsnaz who had survived the Siberian training camps, SFILs who had swum through shark-filled waters. Each soldier carried equipment that would seem primitive to most galactic species. No energy weapons, no force shields, just projectile rifles, explosive charges, and knives made of Earth's steel. But Rodriguez knew something the galaxy did not understand. Sometimes the old ways worked better than the new ones. "Listen up," Rodriguez said. His voice carried to every corner of the bay without shouting. "We are going to a place called New Haven. The people there are dying. Things killing them call themselves Ravagers." He pressed a button on his wrist device. Pictures appeared on the wall screens around the bay. The soldiers saw creatures that looked like giant insects walking on two legs. Black shells covered their bodies like natural armor. Acid dripped from tubes in their mouths. Their eyes were red and held no mercy. The Ravagers are bigger than us, stronger than us. Their skin is harder than ours. Rodriguez paused. But they have two problems. The soldiers listened without moving. First problem. They think size matters more than skill. Second problem. They hunt creatures who run away from them. Rodriguez's winter storm eyes swept across his troops. "We do not run away." Sergeant Lisa Nakamura, a small woman with quick hands and quiet feet, raised her hand. "Sir, what about the civilians? Rescue is the primary mission. But remember this." Rodriguez's voice became harder. "The Ravagers have been torturing innocent people for weeks. They display bodies like trophies. They keep prisoners alive just to watch them suffer." He looked at each face in the crowd. "I do not want any of you to feel bad about what we are going to do to them." The soldiers nodded. They understood. "Private Chen," Rodriguez called. A young soldier stepped forward. "Sir, your family came from China, correct?" "Yes, sir. My grandfather fought in the mountains against invaders." "What did he tell you about fighting enemies who seemed stronger?" Private Chen stood straighter. "He said the mountain does not fear the storm, sir. It waits for the storm to break itself against the rocks." "Exactly." Rodriguez turned back to the group. "We are the mountain. They are the storm." Over the next 3 weeks, as the Indomitable traveled through hyperspace toward New Haven, the soldiers prepared for war. Not in the way other galactic species would expect. The weapons specialists did not upgrade their guns with alien technology. Instead, they made their bullets heavier and their explosives louder. The medics did not study alien healing methods. Instead, they practiced stopping bleeding with whatever materials they could find. The communications experts did not learn telepathy. Instead, they practiced silent hand signals until they could have conversations without making a sound. Rodriguez spent hours studying the Ravager transmissions the Council had intercepted. He learned their hunting patterns, their pack behavior, their weaknesses. "They always attack the largest group first," he told his officers during a planning meeting. "They want to cause the most fear." "That works in our favor," said Captain Williams, a tall man with steady hands. "We can use their tactics against them." "How many Ravagers are we looking at?" asked Major Santos, whose grandfather had been a sniper in the Amazon Wars. "Intelligence says maybe 2,000 on the ground. 10 ships in orbit." Rodriguez traced patterns on the tactical display. "But here's what intelligence does not understand. Numbers do not matter if your enemy is stupid." "Sir?" asked Lieutenant Harris, a young woman who had trained with explosives since she was 18. "The Ravagers think they are apex predators. They have never been hunted by something more dangerous than they are." Rodriguez smiled his cold smile again. "About to learn what humans do to bullies?" On the last day of the journey, Rodriguez gathered his soldiers one final time. Through the ship's windows, they could see New Haven's star growing brighter. "Remember your training," he told them. "Remember why we are here. Remember that somewhere down there, innocent people are counting on us to be the monsters that monsters fear." The soldiers checked their weapons one last time. They painted their faces with mud-colored paint. They sharpened their knives on whetstones brought from Earth. They said prayers in a dozen different languages to a dozen different gods, but they all asked for the same thing: not to come home safely, not to avoid danger. They prayed for the strength to do what needed to be done. As the Indomitable dropped out of hyperspace above New Haven, Rodriguez stood on the bridge and looked down at the burning world below. Smoke rose from 100 cities. Alien ships moved through the atmosphere, like metal sharks. Admiral Chen was right, he said to himself. This is a job for Deathworlders. He turned to his communication officer. Send a message to all Ravager ships. What should it say, sir? Rodriguez thought for a moment. Then he smiled. Tell them. Hell's cavalry has arrived. Tell them their hunt is over. Tell them now they are the prey. The sun was rising over New Haven when the first human drop pods screamed through the atmosphere like falling stars. Each pod carried 10 soldiers and enough firepower to level a city block. They fell through clouds thick with smoke from burning. Zephyrian City's Colonel Rodriguez rode in the lead pod, watching the planet grow larger through the small window. Below him, he could see the capital city of Crystal Falls. Once it had been beautiful, with towers that caught sunlight and turned it into rainbows. Now those towers were broken stumps, and black smoke rose where gardens used to bloom. 30 seconds to impact, announced the pod's computer in a calm voice. Rodriguez checked his rifle one more time. Round him, 9 other soldiers did the same. They had trained for this moment for years, but this was different. This was not a war between humans. This was humanity's first real fight with alien monsters. The pod hit the ground hard enough to crack concrete. The door exploded outward in a shower of sparks and metal. Rodriguez was the first one out, his rifle up and ready. The smell hit him immediately. It was not just the smell of death. Rodriguez had smelled that before on a dozen battlefields. Was worse. This was the smell of deliberate cruelty. Bodies hung from lampposts like decorations. Severed heads were arranged in neat rows along what used to be a peaceful street. Jesus Christ, whispered Private Chen behind him. Stay focused, Rodriguez said quietly. His voice was steady, but inside his chest, something cold and angry was. Waking up, more pods landed around them with sounds like thunder. Soon the street was full of human soldiers emerging from smoke and dust, like ghosts made of steel and fury. Alpha Team, take the North Sector. Rodriguez spoke into his radio. Bravo Team, head east. Charlie Team, you are with me.
Oh.
We are going to find some Ravagers. They did not have to look long. The first Ravager patrol came around the corner 5 minutes later. There were 6 of them, each one 8 feet tall and covered in black shell armor. Acid dripped from tubes near their mouths. Their red eyes scanned the street like searchlights. The lead Ravager saw the humans and stopped. It made a sound like rocks grinding together. Rodriguez thought it might be laughter. The Ravager raised its arms above its head and roared. The sound was meant to freeze prey with fear. It worked on the Zephyrians for weeks. Rodriguez shot it in the head. The bullet punched through the creature's skull with a wet crack. The Ravager looked surprised for half a second before it fell backward. Into the street, the other 5 Ravagers stared at their dead leader. They had never seen prey fight back before. They had definitely never seen prey kill one of them so quickly. Fire, Rodriguez said calmly. 10 rifles spoke at once. The street filled with the sharp cracks of gunfire and the wet sounds of bullets. Finding their targets, in less than 5 seconds, all 6 Ravagers were dead. Private Martinez kicked one of the bodies. That was easier than I expected, sir. It will not stay easy, Rodriguez warned. They were not expecting us. Now they know. We are here. He was right. Across the city, Ravager hunting packs began receiving urgent messages. Something was killing their scouts. Something that did not run away. 20 minutes later, Rodriguez's team found the first group of Zephyrian survivors. They were hiding in the basement of what used to be a library. 12 of them huddled together in the dark, their glass-like. Wings folded tight against their backs in fear. When the humans came down the stairs, the Zephyrians pressed themselves against the far wall. To them, these new creatures looked almost as scary as the Ravagers. Dark clothing, paint on their faces, weapons that smelled of death. We are here to help, Rodriguez said softly. He lowered his rifle and held out his empty hands. We got your message. We came as fast as we could. One of the Zephyrians, an elderly female with silver patterns on her wings, stepped forward. You, ... You are the humans, the ones from the death world. We are, but the council said humans were dangerous. They said you were barely civilized. Rodriguez smiled, but it was a sad smile. We are dangerous, but not to you. The elderly Zephyrian studied his scarred face. You came here to fight the Ravagers. We came here to kill them, Rodriguez corrected gently. All of them. 2 years later, the real fighting began. A pack of 20 Ravagers surrounded a human patrol in the ruins of the old marketplace. The aliens thought they had found easy prey. Sergeant Williams and his 8 soldiers were outnumbered more than 2 to 1. The Ravagers spread out in a circle. It's just like they had done hundreds of times before with Zephyrian civilians. They began their intimidation display, roaring and showing off the bones and skulls they wore as trophies. Sergeant Williams spoke quietly into his radio. Overwatch, this is Ground Team 7. We have contact. Copy. Ground Team 7. Do you need support? Williams watched the Ravager's posture and threatened. He had seen the same behavior from bullies in his old neighborhood back in Detroit. Negative, Overwatch. We have this. The lead Ravager, a massive creature with scars covering its shell, stepped forward, held up the severed head of a Zephyrian child, making threatening noises. Williams felt something snap inside his chest. It was the same feeling he had felt as a boy when bigger kids picked on smaller ones. The same cold anger that had made him join the Marines. The same fury that had carried him through 3 tours of duty in Earth's worst conflicts. You made a mistake, he told the Ravager quietly. The alien did not understand human speech, but it seemed to sense that its intimidation was not working. It roared louder and waved the severed head. Williams shot it in the knee. The Ravager screamed and fell. Before it hit the ground, Williams shot it again and again. Take them, he ordered his squad. What happened next became legend among human forces. The soldiers did not just fight the Ravagers. They hunted them. When a Ravager tried to run, a human followed. When a Ravager tried to hide, a human found it. When a Ravager tried to surrender, a human shot it anyway. In 15 minutes, 20 Ravagers became 20 corpses. Word spread quickly through the alien forces. The prey had become predators. The hunted had become hunters. That night, Ravager commanders held an emergency meeting in their largest ship. The holographic display showed red marks all over the city where their forces had been attacked. Are these creatures? Demanded War Leader Krassel, his mandibles clicking with anger. They call themselves humans, replied Scoutmaster Vexai. They are from a planet that galactic records classify as a death world. All worlds have dangerous animals. That does not explain how they killed 47 of our warriors in one day. Vexai's red eyes dimmed. War Leader, I do not think they are just dangerous animals. I think they are dangerous because they choose to be dangerous. Explain. Watch. This Vexai activated a recording from one of their scouts. The image showed a human soldier helping a wounded Zephyrian to safety. The human was gentle, careful not to hurt the delicate alien. Then the same human turned and shot 3 Ravagers without hesitation. They are not mindless killers, Vexi continued. They choose who to protect and who to destroy. And War-Leader, ... they have chosen to destroy us. Krathsel studied the image. In all his years of hunting, he had never seen anything like it. Creatures that could be gentle and violent at the same time, predators that protected instead of consumed. Many of them are there? Our estimates suggest 500. 500 against 2,000 of us. Send more hunting packs, overwhelm them with numbers. But Vexai was already shaking his head. War Leader, I do not think you understand. These creatures, they do not fight like anything we have seen before. They do not just want to win. They want us to suffer for what we did to the peaceful ones. High above the city, Colonel Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display. Red dots showed Ravager positions. Blue dots showed his soldiers. And green dots showed rescued Zephyrian civilians. Sir, reported Captain Williams over the radio, we have secured the Eastern District. Found 200 survivors in the underground tunnels. Good work. What about enemy casualties? Every Ravager in the sector is dead, sir. Rodriguez nodded with satisfaction. Move to Phase 2. Start hunting their patrols systematically. Copy. That's sir? Yes, Captain? The Ravagers? They seem confused, like they do not understand what is happening to them. Rodriguez looked down at the burning city where his soldiers were turning hunters into the hunted. They spent so long being the monsters that they forgot monsters can be killed too. The first day of humanity's war against the Ravagers was ending. But for the aliens who had thought themselves the ultimate predators, their nightmare was just beginning. 3 days had passed since the humans landed on New Haven. The Ravagers were learning what fear felt like for the first time in their lives. Sergeant Lisa Nakamura moved through the ruins of the old museum like a shadow, her small size and quiet. Feet made her perfect for scouting missions. Behind her, 3 other soldiers followed, their boots making no sound on the broken glass and rubble. They were tracking a Ravager hunting pack that had been terrorizing the northern district. The aliens thought they were safe in the twisted metal maze of collapsed buildings. They were wrong. Lisa held up her fist, signaling her team to stop. Through a gap in the wall, she could see 6 Ravagers standing around something in what used to be the museum's main hall.
Ow.
They were making their grinding rock sounds that passed for laughter. Lisa looked through her rifle scope to see what they found so funny. Her jaw tightened. In the center of the hall, 3 Zephyrian civilians hung from metal chains. They were still alive, but barely. The Ravagers were taking turns prodding them with heated metal rods, enjoying their pain. Ghost to command, Lisa whispered into her radio, using her call sign. I have eyes on 6 tangos. They have hostages. Copy, Ghost. Rules of engagement. Lisa watched one of the Ravagers burn another mark into a Zephyrian's wing. The delicate creature's scream echoed through the ruined building. Extreme prejudice, she replied coldly. Understood. You are cleared hot. Lisa turned to her team. Private Johnson, a big man from Texas who could put 3 bullets through the same hole at 500 yards. Corporal Martinez, a former gang member from Los Angeles who knew every dirty fighting trick ever invented. Private O'Brien, an Irish girl whose grandfather had taught her to make bombs from household items. Johnson, take the big one on the left. Martinez, you get the 2 by the pillar. O'Brien, the one near the hostages, is yours. I will take the leader and the one by the window. Lisa checked her rifle one more time. Remember, these things heal? Fast, double tap everything. The 4 humans spread out around the hall like wolves surrounding prey. The Ravagers were so focused on torturing their victims that they never noticed death creeping up on them. Lisa's first shot took the Ravager leader's head clean off. Before its body hit the ground, Johnson's rifle spoke twice, dropping the big alien with 2 bullets through its chest. Martinez and O'Brien fired at almost the same time, their targets falling in sprays of green blood. The last Ravager, the one holding the heated rod, spun around in confusion. It saw humans appearing from the shadows like nightmares made real. It opened its mouth to roar a challenge. Lisa put a bullet through its throat. The entire fight lasted less than 10 seconds. While her team secured the area, Lisa cut down the Zephyrian prisoners. 2 of them were unconscious but alive. The third, an elderly male with burns covering his glass-like wings, looked up at her with huge, pain-filled eyes. Are you... Are you real? He whispered in the galactic common language. We are real, Lisa said gently, kneeling beside him. You are safe now, but you are so small. How did you defeat them so easily? Lisa looked at the dead Ravagers scattered around the hall. Size does not matter if you are smarter. 10 miles away, in the underground caves where most of the surviving Zephyrians hid, Colonel Rodriguez stood before a gathering of civilian leaders. The caves were lit by soft bioluminescent crystals that cast everything in blue and green light. Elder Tilinara, the oldest Zephyrian on the planet, floated a few inches off the ground. Her wings were torn from weeks of hiding, and her usually silver skin looked gray with exhaustion. Colonel Rodriguez, she said in her musical voice, we have been discussing your proposal. Many of us are afraid. I understand, Rodriguez replied. But my plan will work only if your people help us. You want us to be bait? I want you to be survivors. Rodriguez pulled out a small device that projected a 3-dimensional map of the city. The Ravagers have a base camp here, in the old industrial district. Our intelligence says they are keeping thousands of your people there alive." Elder Tilinara's wings trembled. "Why do they keep prisoners? Why not just kill everyone quickly?" Rodriguez's face became hard as stone. "Because they enjoy the fear. They feed on suffering. But that addiction to cruelty is also their weakness. How? They cannot resist chasing fleeing prey. If a group of your people appears to escape from the caves, the Ravagers will send everything they have to recapture you. That will leave their base camp with minimum guards." Another Zephyrian elder, Kyle Run, spoke up. "And while they chase us, your soldiers attack the camp." "Exactly." Colonel Elder Tilinara said sadly, "We are not warriors. Many of us will die if we try to run from them." Rodriguez knelt down so he was at eye level with the floating alien. "Elder, I give you my word as a human soldier. You will not let them take you. My people will be watching every step of your journey. Any Ravager that gets close to your group will die before it can touch you. You can promise this?" "I promise this." Elder Tilinara studied his scarred face for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. "Very well. We will trust the Deathworlders." The next morning, as New Haven's sun painted the sky red, 200 Zephyrian civilians emerged from their underground hiding places. They moved slowly, deliberately making themselves visible to Ravager scouts. To any watching alien, they looked like refugees trying to escape the city, hidden in the ruins around them. 50 human soldiers tracked every movement through their rifle scopes. The bait worked perfectly. Within minutes, alarms rang through the Ravager base camp. War leader Krathsal roared orders at his subordinates. "All hunting packs, pursue the fleeing prey. Do not let them escape." "War leader," Scoutmaster Vexhai said nervously, "this could be a trap." Trap Krathsal's mandibles clicked with amusement. "These weak creatures finally found the courage to run, and you think it is a trap? Send everyone. I want those refugees captured alive." Soon, over 1,500 Ravagers were streaming out of their base, chasing the slowly moving group of Zephyrians across the broken city. The aliens were so excited by the prospect of fresh victims that they never noticed the human soldiers watching them go. From a rooftop 3 miles away, Major Santos watched the massive alien force through high-powered binoculars. "Man, this is Overwatch 2. The fish are taking the bait. I count approximately 1,500 tangos moving east in pursuit of the civilians." "Copy. Overwatch 2. How many guards remain at the base?" Santos shifted his view to the industrial district. "It looks like maybe 50, 60 at most. They have left their back door wide open." "Understood. All teams, execute Phase 3. At the base camp, the remaining Ravager guards noticed the explosions first. Bright flashes lit up the morning sky as human demolition teams destroyed the outer defenses. Then came the smoke grenades, filling the air with thick gray clouds that blocked vision but not human thermal scopes. The Ravagers stumbled around blindly, firing their acid weapons at shadows. They had never fought an enemy that used concealment and misdirection. Their hunting tactics worked fine against prey that ran in straight lines, but they were useless against predators who attacked from multiple directions at once. Captain Williams led Alpha Team through the main gate while Bravo Team came over the north wall and Charlie Team blew a hole through the south fence. The remaining Ravagers found themselves surrounded by humans who appeared and disappeared in the smoke like deadly ghosts. But the real shock came when the humans reached the prisoner. Compound's Captain Williams kicked open the door to the largest building and stopped dead. Inside were over 3,000 Zephyrian civilians, packed together in cages barely large enough for children. Many were injured. All were terrified. "Jesus," whispered Private Chen. Beside him, Williams spoke into his radio, his voice shaking. "With anger command, we have found the prisoners, requesting immediate medical support and transport." "How many, Captain?" Williams looked at row after row of cages stretching into the darkness. "All of them, sir. We found all of them." As human medics rushed to treat the freed prisoners, Captain Williams stepped outside and looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, 1,500 Ravagers were still chasing the Zephyrian refugees. They thought they were the hunters. They were about to learn different. William smiled coldly and spoke into his radio. Overwatch, this is Alpha Leader. The civilians are secure. Tell Colonel Rodriguez he can spring his trap in the Eastern District. The fleeing Zephyrians had led their pursuers into a narrow valley between two collapsed skyscrapers. It looked like the perfect place to corner helpless prey. The Ravagers poured into the valley like water through a funnel, roaring with excitement. Soon they would have fresh victims to torture. That was when Colonel Rodriguez gave the order that would be remembered in military history books for the next 1,000 years. All units, welcome to the killing ground. Light them up. The valley became a killing ground. From the tops of the broken skyscrapers, human snipers opened fire. From hidden positions in the rubble, machine gunners sent streams of bullets into the packed mass of Ravagers below. From concealed bunkers, soldiers with rocket launchers turned alien bodies into smoking craters. The Ravagers had run straight into the most perfect ambush in military history. War leader Krathsel watched his warriors die around him and finally understood what the humans were. They were not just dangerous animals. They were something far worse. They were creatures who made war into an art form. Retreat, he roared over the sound of explosions. Fall back to the ships, but there was nowhere to run. The humans had chosen their battlefield carefully. The valley had only 2 exits, and both were blocked by human soldiers with weapons that spat death faster than Ravager. Eyes could follow, high above the slaughter. Colonel Rodriguez watched through binoculars from the bridge of the Indomitable. The tactical display showed the battle in cold, precise numbers. 1,500 Ravagers had entered the valley. Less than 200 were still moving. Reported Lieutenant Harris, the remaining enemy forces are trying to break through the north exit. Let them come, Rodriguez said calmly. Alpha Team is waiting for them. At the north exit, Captain Williams and his soldiers crouched behind concrete barriers they had built during the night. The barriers were angled perfectly to create crossfire zones. Any Ravager that tried to escape would have to run through a corridor of death. The first group of fleeing aliens rounded the corner at full speed. They were no longer the confident hunters who had terrorized New Haven for weeks. They were broken, frightened creatures running for their lives. Williams waited until they were in the middle of the killing zone. Fire. The crossfire was devastating. Bullets came from 3 directions at once. The Ravagers fell like wheat before a scythe. Those few who survived the first volley tried to take cover behind their dead comrades. It did not help. Human bullets went through Ravager armor like paper, in less than 5 minutes. The north exit was choked with alien corpses. The south exit lasted even less time. Sergeant Nakamura's team had set up a series of explosive traps along the narrow passage. When the fleeing Ravagers triggered them, the explosions brought down half the building. The few survivors who crawled out of the wreckage found human soldiers waiting with rifles ready back in the main valley. War leader Krathsel crouched behind the body of his dead lieutenant and tried to understand how everything had gone so wrong. 3 days ago, he had commanded 2,000 of the galaxy's most feared predators. Now he had maybe 50 warriors left alive, and they were all trapped like animals in a cage. War leader, Scoutmaster Vex High crawled over to him, green blood streaming from a wound in his head. We must surrender. For mercy. Mercy. Krathsel looked at his old friend with eyes that had seen too much death. Have you forgotten what we did to their allies? Have you forgotten the displays we made of Zephyrian corpses? Vex High's mandibles clicked nervously. But surely they will accept surrender. All civilized species, they are not civilized, Krathsel interrupted. That is what makes them so dangerous. As if summoned by his words, a human voice spoke from the valley walls. It was amplified somehow, echoing off the broken concrete and twisted metal. Attention, Ravagers. This is Colonel Rodriguez of the Human Military Forces. You are surrounded. You have 2 choices. The few surviving aliens looked up, trying to spot the source of the voice. Choice 1. Surrender unconditionally. Throw down your weapons and lie face down on the ground. War leader Krathsel felt something that might have been hope. Choice 2. Die where you stand. The hope died. But you have 30 seconds to decide. Krathsel looked around at his remaining warriors. They were the survivors of a race that had conquered dozens of worlds. They had never known defeat. They had never known fear. Now they knew both. War leader Vexai whispered, "What do we do?" Krathzel thought about the Zephyrian children they had tortured. He thought about the displays of severed heads they had arranged in the streets. He thought about the screams of their victims echoing through the burning cities. He thought about the human soldier's voice, cold and final as the space between stars. "We die as warriors," he said finally. "We do not deserve mercy." He stood up, raised his acid weapon, and fired at the nearest human position. The response was immediate. Every human weapon in the valley spoke at once. The sound was like the end of the world. When the shooting stopped, nothing moved in the valley except smoke drifting in the wind. Colonel Rodriguez climbed down from his observation post and walked into the killing ground. His boots crunched on spent bullet casings and broken alien armor. The silence was complete. Captain Williams appeared at his elbow. "Sir, all enemy forces in the valley are confirmed dead." "What about their ships?" Rodriguez looked up at the sky, where 10 Ravager vessels still hung in orbit like black scars against the blue atmosphere. "Signal the fleet. Tell them any ship that does not leave this system in the next hour will be destroyed. And if they refuse," Rodriguez smiled his cold smile, "then we show them what human warships can do." But the Ravager ships did not refuse. Within 30 minutes, all 10 vessels had jumped to hyperspace, carrying word of what had happened on New Haven to every corner of the galaxy. That evening, Colonel Rodriguez stood in the ruins of Crystal Falls with Elder Tilinara. The Zephorian leader floated beside him, her torn wings catching the light of New Haven's setting sun. "It is over?" she asked softly. "It is over," Rodriguez confirmed. "All the prisoners have been freed. All the Ravagers are dead or fled. Your people are safe." Elder Tilinara was quiet for a long moment. "Colonel, may I ask you something?" "Of course. When you first arrived, you told us that humans were dangerous. You have been nothing but kind to my people. You've risked your lives to save strangers you had never met. Why?" Rodriguez looked out over the broken city. Already Zephyrian work crews were beginning to clear the rubble. Children who had hidden in caves for weeks were playing in the streets again. The sound of their laughter echoed off the damaged buildings like music. "Elder," he said finally, "where I come from, we have a saying. The only thing necessary for evil to win is for good people to do nothing. But the galaxy calls you Deathworlders. They say you are barely civilized." Rodriguez nodded. "We are from a death world. Every day on Earth, something tries to kill us. Storms that can level cities, animals that hunt in packs, diseases that spread like fire. We learn to be hard because our world is hard." He turned to look at the delicate alien floating beside him. "But we also learned something else. We learned that the strong should protect the weak. We learned that power without mercy is just another form of evil. We learned that sometimes to stop a monster, you need to become something the monster fears." Elder Tilinara studied his scarred face. "And what do monsters fear? Bigger monsters who choose to be good?" 3 weeks later, the story of New Haven reached every civilized world in the galaxy. The tale spread through alien communication networks. Faster than light itself, a peaceful species had been saved by warriors from a death world. Predators who had seemed unstoppable had been hunted to extinction by creatures even more dangerous. On the Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Quilin stood before the Great Assembly once again. But this time, when she spoke, the room was silent. "Council members," she said, "I believe we owe the humans an apology. We called them barely civilized. We said they were too dangerous to trust. We were wrong." General Crixenel, the warrior whose fleet had been too far away to help, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "They are still Deathworlders." "Yes," Qualin agreed, "they are. But they are Deathworlders who choose to protect instead of destroy. They are monsters who hunt other monsters. They're the nightmare that nightmares fear." She looked around the Great Hall at representatives from 100 different species. "And they are our allies." In the weeks that followed, requests for human military assistance began arriving on Earth from across the galaxy. Pirates attacking trade routes, slavers raiding peaceful colonies, warlords threatening entire star systems. Each request was answered the same way. Hell's cavalry was coming. And in the dark spaces between the stars, those who preyed on the innocent began to learn a new kind of fear. They learned that somewhere in the galaxy was a small blue world full of creatures who had turned violence into an art form and mercy into a science. They learned that if you hurt the innocent, if you torture the helpless, if you make war on those who want only peace, then sooner or later you would hear 4 words that would become your doom. Deathworlders have been deployed. And then monsters learned what it felt like to be prey.